How are you? This is your humble narrator, sometimes referred to as the Shrieker Speaker, Edward E. French, inviting you to listen to this encore performance reading from the Perfidious Playlists section of the Fiction Fantastique channel. I'll be back again next week with a nauseatingly new audio atrocity. Enjoy. The Cruel Equations, written by Robert Sheckley, read by Edward E. French. After landing on Regulus 5, the men of the Yarmolinsky expedition made camp and activated PR-22-0134, their perimeter robot, whom they called Max. The robot was a voice-activated bipedal mechanism whose function was to guard the camp against the depredation of aliens in the event that aliens were ever encountered. Max had originally been a regulation gunmetal gray, but on the interminable outward trip they had repainted him a baby blue. Max stood exactly 4 feet high. The men of the expedition had come to think of him as a kindly, reasonable little metal man, a Ferris gnome, a miniature Tin Woodman of Oz. They were wrong, of course. Their robot had none of the qualities which they projected onto him. PR-22-0134 was no more reasonable than a McCormick harvester, no more kindly than an automated steel mill. Morally, he might be compared to a turbine or a radio, but not to anything human. PR-22-0134's only human attribute was potentiality. Little Max, baby blue, with red eyes, circled the perimeter of the camp, his sensors alert. Captain Beatty and Lieutenant James took off in the hover jet for a week of exploration. They left Lieutenant Halloran to mind the store. Halloran was a short, stocky man with a barrel chest and bandy legs. He was cheerful, freckled, tough, profane, and resourceful. He ate lunch and acknowledged a radio check from the exploring team. Then he unfolded a canvas chair and sat back to enjoy the scenery. Regulus 5 was a pretty nice place, if you happened to be an admirer of desolation. A superheated landscape of rock, gravel, and lava stretched on all sides. There were some birds that looked like sparrows, and some animals that looked like coyotes. A few cacti scratched out a bare living. Halloran pulled himself to his feet. "Max, I'm going to take a look outside the perimeter. You'll be in charge while I'm gone." The robot stopped patrolling. "Yes, sir. I will be in charge. You will not allow any aliens to come busting in, especially the two-headed kind with their feet on backwards." "Very well, sir." Max had no sense of humor when it came to aliens. "Do you have the password, Mr. Halloran?" "I got it, Max. How about you?" "I have it, sir." "Okay, see you later." Halloran left the camp. After examining the real estate for an hour and finding nothing of interest, Halloran came back. He was pleased to see PR-22-0134 patrolling along the perimeter. It meant that everything was all right. "Hi there, Max," he called. "Any messages for me?" "Halt," the robot said. "Give the password." "Cut the comedy, Max. I'm in no mood for—" "Halt," the robot shouted, as Halloran was about to cross the perimeter. Halloran came to an abrupt stop. Max's photoelectric eyes had flared, and a soft double click announced that his primary armament was activated. Halloran decided to proceed with caution. "I am halted." "My name is Halloran. Okay now, Maxie?" "Give the password, please." "Bluebells," Halloran said. "Now, if you don't mind—" "Do not cross the perimeter," the robot said. "Your password is incorrect." "The hell it is. I gave it to you myself." "That was the previous password." "Previous? You're out of your semi-solid mind," Halloran said. "Bluebells is the only password, and you didn't get a new one because there isn't a new one. Unless—" The robot waited. Halloran considered the unpleasant thought from various angles, and at last put words to it. "Unless Captain Beatty gave you a new password before he left." "Is that what happened?" "Yes," the robot said. "I should have thought of it," Halloran said. He grinned, but he was annoyed. There had been slip-ups like this before, but there had always been someone inside the camp to correct them. Still, there was nothing to worry about. When you came right down to it, the situation was more than a little funny, and it could be resolved with just a modicum of reason. Halloran was assuming, of course, that PR robots possess a modicum of reason. "Max," Halloran said, "I see how it probably happened. Captain Beatty probably gave you a new password, but he failed to tell me about it. I then compounded his error by neglecting to check on the password situation before I left the perimeter." The robot made no comment. Halloran went on. "The mistake, in any case, is easily corrected." "I sincerely hope so," the robot said. "Of course it is," Halloran said, a little less confidently. "The captain and I follow a set procedure in these matters. When he gives you a password, he also transmits it to me orally. But, just in case there is any lapse, like now, he also writes it down." "Does he?" the robot asked. "Yes, he does," Halloran said. "Always, invariably. Which includes this time, too. I hope. Do you see that tent behind you?" The robot swiveled one sensor, keeping the other fixed on Halloran. "I see it." "Okay. Inside the tent, there is a table. On the table is a gray metal clipboard." "Correct," Max said. "Fine. Now then, there is a sheet of paper in the clipboard. On it is a list of vital data, emergency radio frequencies, that sort of thing. On the top of the paper, circled in red, is the current password." The robot extended and focused his sensor, then retracted it. He said to Halloran, "What you say is true, but irrelevant. I am concerned only with your knowledge of the actual password, not its location. If you can state the password, I must let you into the camp. If not, I must keep you out." "This is insane," Halloran shouted. "Max, you legalistic idiot. It's me, Halloran, and you damned well know it. We've been together since the day you were activated. Now will you please stop playing Horatio at the bridge and let me in?" "Your resemblance to Mr. Halloran is uncanny," the robot admitted, "but I am neither equipped nor empowered to conduct identity tests, nor am I permitted to act on the basis of my perceptions. The only proof I can accept is the password itself." Halloran fought down his rage. In a conversational tone, he said, "Max, old buddy, it sounds like you're implying that I am an alien." "Since you do not have the password," Max said, "I must proceed on that assumption." "Max!" Halloran shouted, stepping forward. "For Christ's sake!" "Do not approach the perimeter," the robot said, his sensors flaring. "Whoever or whatever you are, stand back." "All right, I'm standing back," Halloran said quickly. "Don't get so nervous." He backed away from the perimeter and waited until the robot's sensors had gone quiescent. Then he sat down on a rock. He had some serious thinking to do. It was almost noon in Regulus's 1,000-hour day. The twin suns hung overhead, distorted white blobs in a dead white sky. They moved sluggishly above a dark granite landscape, slow-motion juggernauts who destroyed what they touched. And occasional birds soared in weary circles through the dry, fiery air. A few small animals crept from shadow to shadow. A creature that looked like a wolverine gnawed at a tent peg and was ignored by a small blue robot. A man sat on a rock and watched the robot. "Halloran, already feeling the effects of exposure and thirst, was trying to understand his situation and to plan a way out of it. He wanted water. Soon he would need water. Not long after that, he would die for lack of water. There was no known source of potable water within walking distance, except in the camp. There was plenty of water in the camp, but he couldn't get to it past the robot. Beatty and James would routinely try to contact him in 3 days, but they would probably not be alarmed if he didn't reply. Shortwave reception was erratic, even on Earth. They would try again in the evening, and again the next day. Failing to raise him then, they would come back. Call it 4 Earth days, then. How long could he go without water? The answer depended on his rate of water loss. When he had sustained a total liquid loss of between 10 and 15% of his body weight, he would go into shock. This could happen with disastrous suddenness. Bedouin tribesmen separated from their supplies had been known to succumb in 24 hours. Stranded motorists in the American Southwest, trying to walk out of the Baker or Mojave deserts, sometimes didn't last out the day. Regulus 5 was as hot as the Kalahari and had less humidity than Death Valley. A day on Regulus stretched for just under 1,000 Earth hours. It was noon. He had 500 hours of unremitting sunshine ahead of him without shelter or shade. How long could he last? 1 Earth day. 2, at the most optimistic estimate. Forget about Beatty and James. He had to get water from the camp, and he had to get it fast. That meant he had to find a way past the robot. He decided to try logic. Max, you must know that I, Halloran, left the camp, and that I, Halloran, returned an hour later, and that it is I, Halloran, now standing in front of you without the password. The probabilities are very strongly in favor of your interpretation, the robot admitted. Well then, but I cannot act on probabilities or even near certainties. After all, I have been created for the express purpose of dealing with aliens, despite the extremely low probability that I will ever meet one. Can you at least give me a canteen of water? No. That would be against orders. When did you ever get orders about giving out water? I didn't. Not specifically. But the conclusion flows from my primary directive. I am not supposed to aid or assist aliens. Halloran then said a great many things, very rapidly and in a loud voice. His statements were pungently and idiomatically Terran, but Max ignored them since they were abusive, tendentious, and entirely without merit. After a while, the alien who called himself Halloran moved out of sight behind a pile of rocks. After some minutes, a creature sauntered out from behind a pile of rocks, whistling. "Hello there, Max," the creature said. "Hello, Mr. Halloran," the robot replied. Halloran stopped 10 feet away from the perimeter. "Well," he said, "I've been looking around, but there's not much to see. Anything happen here while I've been gone?" "Yes, sir," Max said. "An alien tried to enter the camp." Halloran raised both eyebrows. "Is that a fact?" "Indeed it is, sir." "What did the alien look like?" "He looked very much like you, Mr. Halloran." "God in heaven!" Halloran exclaimed. "How did you know he was not me?" "Because he tried to enter the camp without giving the password. That, of course, the real Mr. Halloran would never do." "Exactly so," Halloran said. "Good work, Maxie. We'll have to keep our eyes open for that fellow." "Yes, sir." "Thank you, sir. Halloran, nodded casually. He was very pleased with himself. He had figured out that Max, by the very terms of his construction, would have to deal with each encounter as unique and to dispose of it according to its immediate merits. This had to be so, since Max was not permitted to reason on the basis of prior experiences. Max had built-in biases. He assumed that Earthmen always have the password. He assumed that aliens never have the password, but always try to enter the camp. Therefore, a creature who did not try to enter the camp must be presumed to be free of the alien camp-entering compulsion, and therefore to be an Earthman, until proven otherwise. Halloran thought that was pretty good reasoning for a man who had lost several % of his body fluids. Now he had to hope that the rest of his plan would work as well. "Max," he said, "during my inspection, I made one rather disturbing discovery." "Sir?" "I found that we are camped on the edge of a fault in this planet's crust. The lines of the schism are unmistakable. They make the San Andreas Fault look like a hairline fracture." "Sounds bad, sir. Is there much risk?" "You bet your tin ass there's much risk, and much risk means much work. You and I, Maxie, are going to shift the entire camp about 2 miles due west, immediately, so pick up the canteens and follow me." "Yes, sir," Max said, "as soon as you release me." "Okay, I release you," Halloran said. "Hurry up." "I can't," the robot said. "You must release me by giving the current password, and by stating that it is cancelled. Then I'll be able to stop guarding this particular perimeter." "There's no time for formalities," Halloran said tightly. "The new password is whitefish. Get moving, Max. I just felt a tremor." "I didn't feel anything." "Why should you?" Halloran snapped. "You're just a PR robot, not an Earthman with special training and finely attuned sensory apparatus. Damn, there it goes again. You must have felt it that time." "I think I did feel it." "Then get moving." "Mr. Halloran, I can't. It is physically impossible for me to leave this perimeter without a formal release." "Please, sir, release me." "Don't get so excited," Halloran said. "On second thought, we're going to leave the camp right here." "But the earthquake—" "I've just made a new calculation. We've got more time than I had thought. I'm going to take another look around." Halloran moved behind the rocks, out of the robot's sight. His heart was beating heavily, and the blood in his veins felt thick and sluggish. Bright spots were dancing before his eyes. He diagnosed an incipient sunstroke and forced himself to sit very quietly in a patch of shade. The endless day stretched on. The amorphous white blob of the double suns crept an inch toward the horizon. PR-22-0134 guarded his perimeter. A breeze sprang up, turned into half a gale, and blew sand against Max's unblinking sensors. The robot trudged on, keeping to an exact circle. The wind died down, and a figure appeared among the rocks, some 20 yards away. Someone was watching him. Was it Halloran or the alien? Max refused to speculate. He guarded his perimeter. A small creature like a coyote darted out of the desert and ran a zigzag course almost under Max's feet. A large bird dived down in pursuit. There was a thin, high scream, and blood was splashed against one of the tents. The bird flapped heavily into the air with something writhing in its claws. Max paid no attention to this. He was watching a humanoid creature stagger toward him out of the rocks. The creature stopped. "Good day, Mr. Halloran," Max said at once. "I feel that I should mention, sir, that you show definite signs of dehydration. That is a condition which leads to shock, unconsciousness, and death, unless attended to promptly." "Shut up," Halloran said, in a husky, heat-parched voice. "Very well, Mr. Halloran." "Stop calling me Mr. Halloran." "Why should I do that, sir?" "Because I am not Halloran. I am an alien." "Indeed?" the robot said. Yes, indeed. Do you doubt my word? Well, your mere unsupported statement... Never mind, I'll give you proof. I do not know the password. Is that proof enough? When the robot still hesitated, Halloran said, Look, Mr. Halloran told me that I should remind you of your own fundamental definitions, which are the criteria by which you perform your job. To wit, an Earthman is a sentient creature who knows the password. An alien is a sentient creature who does not know the password. Yes, the robot said reluctantly. Knowledge of the password is my yardstick. But still, I sense something wrong. Suppose you're lying to me. If I'm lying, then I must be an Earthman who knows there's no danger. But you know that I'm not lying because you know that no Earthman would lie about the password. I don't know if I can assume that. You must. No Earthman wants to appear as an alien, does he? Of course not. And a password is the only certain differentiation between a human and an alien? Yes. Then the case is proven. I'm still not sure, Max said. And Halloran realized that the robot was reluctant to receive instruction from an alien, even if the alien was only trying to prove that he was an alien. He waited. After a while, Max said, All right, I agree that you are an alien. Accordingly, I refuse to let you into the camp. I'm not asking you to let me in. The point is, I am Halloran's prisoner. And you know what that means. The robot blinked his sensors rapidly. I don't know what that means. It means, Halloran said, that you must follow Halloran's orders concerning me. His orders are that I must be detained within the perimeter of the camp and must not be released unless he gives specific orders to that effect. Max cried, Mr. Halloran knows that I can't let you into the camp. Of course, but Halloran is telling you to imprison me in the camp, which is an entirely different matter. Is it? Really? It certainly is. You must know that Earthmen always imprison aliens who try to break into their camp. I seem to have heard something to that effect, Max said. Still, I cannot allow you in, but I can guard you here, just in front of the camp. That's not very good, Halloran said sulkily. I'm sorry, but it's the best I can do. Oh, very well, Halloran said, sitting down on the sand. I am your prisoner, then. Yes. Then give me a drink of water. I am not allowed. Damn it, you certainly know that alien prisoners are to be treated with the courtesy appropriate to their rank, and are to be given the necessities of life according to the Geneva Convention and other international protocols. Yes. I've heard about that, Max said. What is your rank? Jamistar. Senior grade. My serial number is 1227831. And I need water immediately, because I'll die without it. Max thought for several seconds. At last he said, I will give you water, but only after Mr. Halloran has had water. Surely there's enough for both of us, Halloran asked, trying to smile in a winning manner. That, Max said firmly, is for Mr. Halloran to decide. All right, Halloran said, getting to his feet. Wait. Stop. Where are you going? Just behind those rocks, Halloran said. It's time for my noon prayer, which I must do in utter privacy. But what if you escape? What would be the use? Halloran asked, walking off. Halloran would simply capture me again. True. True, the man's a genius, the robot muttered. Very little time passed. Suddenly Halloran came out of the rocks. Mr. Halloran? Max asked. That's me, Halloran said cheerfully. Did my prisoner get here okay? Yes, sir. He's over there, in the rocks, praying. No harm in that, Halloran said. Listen, Max, when he comes out again, make sure he gets some water. I'll be glad to. After you have had your water, sir. Hell, I'm not even thirsty. Just see that poor damned alien gets some. I can't. Not until I've seen you drink your fill. The state of dehydration I mentioned, sir, is now more advanced. You are not far from collapse. I insist, and I implore you. Drink. All right. Stop nagging and get me a canteen. Oh, sir. What's the matter? You know I can't leave my post here on the perimeter. Why in hell can't you? It's against orders, and also because there's an alien behind those rocks. I'll keep watch for you, Max, old boy, and you fetch me a canteen, like a good boy. It's good of you to offer, sir, but I can't allow that. I am a PR robot, constructed for the sole purpose of guarding the camp. I must not turn that responsibility over to anyone else, not even an Earthman or another PR robot, until the password is given and I am relieved of duty. Yeah. Yeah, Halloran muttered. Any place I start, it still comes out zero. Painfully, he dragged himself behind the rocks. What's the matter? The robot asked. What did I say? There was no answer. Mr. Halloran? Jamistar alien? Still no answer. Max continued to guard his perimeter. Halloran was tired. His throat hurt from talking to a stupid robot, and his body hurt all over from the endless blows of the double sun. He had gone beyond sunburn. He was blackened, crusted over, a roast turkey of a man. Pain, thirst, and fatigue dominated him, leaving no room for any emotion, except anger. He was furious at himself for being caught in so absurd a situation, for letting himself be killed so casually. Halloran? Oh, yes, he didn't know the password, poor devil, and he died of exposure not 50 yards from water and shelter. Sad, strange, funny sort of end. It was anger that kept him going now, that enabled him to review his situation and search for a way into the camp. He had convinced the robot that he was an Earthman. Then he had convinced the robot that he was an alien. Both approaches had failed when it came to the crucial issue of entry into the camp. What was there left to try now? He rolled over and stared up at the glowing white sky. Black specks moved across his line of vision. Hallucination? No, birds were circling. They were ignoring their usual diet of coyotes, waiting for the collapse of something really tasty. A walking banquet. Halloran forced himself to sit upright. Now, he told himself, I must review the situation and search for a loophole. From Max's viewpoint, all sentient creatures who possess the password are Earthmen. All sentient creatures who do not possess the password are aliens. Which means... means what? For a second, Halloran thought he had stumbled onto the key to the puzzle, but he was having difficulty concentrating. The birds were circling lower. One of the coyotes had come out and was sniffing at his shoes. Forget all that. Concentrate. Become a practical automatologist. Really, when you get right down to it, Max is stupid. He wasn't designed to detect frauds except in the most limited capacity. His criteria are archaic. Like that story about how Plato defined man as a featherless biped, and Diogenes the Cynic produced a plucked chicken which he maintained fitted the definition. Plato thereupon changed his definition to state that man was a featherless biped with broad nails. But what has that got to do with Max? Halloran shook his head savagely, trying to force himself to concentrate, but all he could see was Plato's man, a 6-foot chicken without a feather on his body, but with broad fingernails. Max was vulnerable. He had to be. Unlike Plato, he couldn't change his mind. Max was stuck with his definitions, and with their logical consequences. "Well, I'll be damned," Halloran said. "I do believe I have figured a way." He tried to think it through, but found he wasn't able. He simply had to try it, and win or lose on the result. "Max," he said softly, "one plucked chicken is coming up, or rather, one unplucked chicken. Put that in your cosmology and smoke it." He wasn't sure what he meant, but he knew what he was going to do. Captain Beatty and Lieutenant James returned to the camp at the end of 3 Earth days. They found Halloran, unconscious and delirious, a victim of dehydration and sunstroke. He raved about how Plato had tried to keep him out of the camp, and how Halloran had transformed himself into a 6-foot chicken without broad fingernails, thus getting the best of the learned philosopher and his robot buddy. Max had given him water, wrapped his body in wet blankets, and had produced black shade out of a double sheet of plastic. Halloran would recover in a day or 2. He had written a note before passing out. No password. Couldn't get back in. Tell factory install emergency bypass in PR robots. Beatty couldn't make any sense out of Halloran, so he questioned Max. He heard about Halloran's trip of inspection and the various aliens who looked exactly like him, and what they said and what Halloran said. Obviously these were all increasingly desperate attempts on Halloran's part to get back into the camp. But what happened after that? Beatty asked. How did he finally get in? He didn't get in, Max said. He simply was in at one point. But how did he get past you? He didn't. That would have been quite impossible. Mr. Halloran simply was inside the camp. I don't understand, Beatty said. Quite frankly, sir, I don't either. I'm afraid that only Mr. Halloran can answer your question. It'll be a while before Halloran talks to anyone, Beatty said. Still, if he figured out a way, I suppose I can too. Beatty and James both tried, but they couldn't come up with the answer. They weren't desperate enough, or angry enough, and they weren't even thinking along the right lines. To understand how Halloran had gotten in, it was necessary to view the final course of events from Max's viewpoint. Heat, wind, birds, rocks, sun. I disregard the irrelevant. I guard the camp perimeter against aliens. Now something is coming toward me, out of the rocks, out of the desert. It is a large creature. It has hair hanging over its face. It creeps on 4 limbs. I challenge. It snarls at me. I challenge again, in a more peremptory manner. I switch on my armament. I threaten. The creature growls and keeps on crawling toward the camp. I consult my definitions in order to produce an appropriate response. I know that humans and aliens are both classes of sentient creature, characterized by intelligence, which is expressed through the faculty of speech. This faculty is invariably employed to respond to my challenges. Humans always answer correctly when asked the password. Aliens always answer incorrectly when asked the password. Both aliens and humans always answer correctly or incorrectly, when asked the password. Since this is invariably so, I must assume that any creature which does not answer my challenge is unable to answer and can be ignored. Birds and reptiles can be ignored. This large beast which crawls past me can also be ignored. I pay no attention to the creature, but I keep my senses at extended alert, because Mr. Halloran is somewhere out in the desert. There is also an alien out there, a Jamistar. But what is this? It is Mr. Halloran, miraculously back in the camp, groaning, suffering from dehydration and sunstroke. The beast who crept past me is gone without trace. And the Jamistar is presumably still praying in the rocks.